The other subject would be the Shannon Sharpe fiasco. Now, those who watch or are watching this may think that I'm a hater of some sorts, and I don't care. That term is so overrated and overused, but I've been called worse. I'm not going to call a grown man Shay Shay, but I know he goes by Shay Shay or Unk. But Sharpe has been on my television screen for the past 20 years. Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new to the channel, this is Can I Be Ernest TV. As you can tell, when I'm not creating videos of just interest, things that I like to do, enjoy, I usually enjoy doing social commentary. I did vow not to make this a political channel, and I won't. But every now and then I don't mind adding my 2 cents on just things that are going on, hot topics. Why? Because everyone else does. So it's just something that I enjoy doing. In this video, I do want to discuss a few of the things that happened over the past week, namely the presidential debates. We have the loss of James Earl Jones, the Shannon Sharpe fiasco, and of course, Kendrick Lamar being announced as the main headliner for Super Bowl 59 next February in New Orleans. So first things first, James Earl Jones, prominent actor in many, many films over the course of his career, passed away at the age of 93. 93 is a long life. And as we all know, with life comes death. It's inevitable. So we want to celebrate him as well. Many of you guys who are fans of film may remember him as being the voice of Darth Vader from the Star Wars series. Admittedly, I've never been a Star Wars fan or Star Wars person. Just not my cup of tea. Although I do love and enjoy space talk and universe talk and all that good stuff, but just never got into that series or Star Trek for that matter. Conversation for another day. But he is mostly known for that. I remember him as being in the movie The Sandlot as a teenager, a baseball movie from the early 90s where he played a blind former Negro League player who owned a menacing dog who was on a prowl to attack. Basically, a bunch of kids from a small neighborhood used to meet up at a park or sandlot where they would play games, and one of the key players of that group hit a home run into James Earl Jones, the character, his backyard. And long story short, the main character of that movie, a young man at that time, bonded with James Earl Jones once they got over that hump of getting their ball back and found out that James Earl Jones was a good guy. And so they all bonded and became good friends. And it was a very good movie if you're a baseball fan or a non-baseball fan. But something that stood out over the years for me growing up, and just remember his character very well. Also, James Earl Jones had a very distinct voice. One of those voices in entertainment that it's kind of just etched in memory. Once you hear it, you know who it is. You don't even have to see his face. And there's several guys like that just off top, you know who they are. So rest in peace to James Earl Jones, and he will be missed. I'm sure he hasn't been in many films once he aged, but we have movies like Field of Dreams, another baseball movie where he, again, was featured in that. He seemed to be in a lot of baseball movies back in the 80s and 90s. So just as a kid who grew up liking baseball, he'll forever be remembered. The next topic is basically the shit show. And it's sad that we have to go from that story to this one, but the shit show of the presidential debate last Tuesday, as I've alluded to in many videos before, I have a long form video and I think I have a short one here where I just talk about this being a travesty, this probably being the worst election year in history. I'm comfortable enough in making a blanket statement like that. Donald Trump does it. He makes blanket statements all the time. He's the best this in history. He's had the most people at his events in history. Why not say this is the worst election year in history? Because it is. Hey, listen. If Donald Trump has any chance of winning the 2024 presidential election, his advisors will have to pull him aside immediately, and they have to make immediate changes come debate 2 and 3. That was debate 1 of a possible 3 debate series with about 50 days left to election day. they're going to have to scrap up their plans and come up with a different mentality. Um, Kamala ate Donald for lunch, and you know, I got to call a spade a spade. She's a seasoned politician. She showed poise. Had her demeanor was on point. Good body language. Again, she's seasoned. Donald is admittedly not a politician, and we know this, and it shows. He gets very disheveled. Um, he starts taking personal jabs, making personal insults. He turns a certain tint of orange when he's upset. He starts to, pout and overspeak the moderators, and I get it. It might have felt like a 3-on-1. NBC and some of these liberal networks, they're not Team Trump at all. So Trump might be on the defense most of the time, but he has to show better poise. And what I saw last Tuesday was cringe. Very uncomfortable to watch at times. I can feel myself sliding down my seat, just not comfortable with what was being on my, being shown on my television. It's a lot of work that needs to be done between now and the next debate. Again, these candidates, and this is for future candidates as well. If you want to give the American people hope, give the younger generation hope, those who are just now starting to vote hope, you have to have the uncomfortable conversations. And it just seems to me that every election year, it's the same rhetoric. I grew up in the 80s, and all throughout that decade, it's the war on drugs. That's all it was. And then we enter the 90s, we have the war on terror. We start the year off of we start the decade of the 90s in the Gulf War. We have a few, years where we're not involved in anything. There's a lot of Bosnia stuff going on and things throughout the world, but the United States itself is kind of like on some kind of chill mode. And then the latter part of the 90s, early 2000s, we have the war on terror with, of course, 9/11. So that rhetoric has gotten old now. War on drugs, war on terror, and they need something new. Donald Trump in 2016, it was refreshing to many of us. Despite whether you hated him, you thought he was racist, you thought this, you thought that, it was a breath of fresh air. He started to bring to the table conversation that we haven't heard before. We didn't hear presidential candidates in the past talk about building walls, rectifying illegal immigration. If it was discussed, it was briefly. It was very little, but that was the theme of his campaign 8 years ago. Building walls. Some people scoffed at it. Some people thought it was comical, but I think he meant well, and it was new. So perhaps that's what got him into the office. Plus, he's running against, Hillary Clinton at the time, who, wasn't a fan favorite. So it was refreshing. But Trump has to give me something else. He has to give people who aren't convinced right now something else. The building the wall and the illegal immigration, it's a conversation for sure. But is that a main focus for Americans? Is that something that Americans are waking up every day like, you know what? We've got to fix illegal immigration. We've got to fix that ASAP. Like, is that at the plate? Is that on your plate when you wake up in the morning? Because it's not on mine. It's the least bit of my concerns. It's a concern when you think of certain things that illegal immigrants may receive, certain perks they receive over those who were born here. But it's not the first thing I think of. I think of inflation. I think of the job market. I think of the court systems. I think of law enforcement and some of the injustices towards, black males or black people or others as well. I think of things like that, just to name a few. And I never hear that on these debates. Never. We get the same buzzwords. Taxes or tax breaks, illegal immigration. Every now and then you might hear something about the American dream, which we all know has pretty much died out. I want to hear things that make sense to everyday living. That way, every day doesn't feel like a shit show. Every day doesn't feel like you've lost hope. And until a presidential candidate has the the guts, the balls, whatever, to just have the uncomfortable conversation. This is all one big show to me, you know? But I would love to hear about law enforcement and the injustices that are done towards certain groups, you know? But they're not going to do that. Why? Because the police force is the biggest gang in this country. Their union is the strongest, and most of these presidential candidates tiptoe on that subject matter because you don't want to ruffle their feathers. You know what I mean? So it's it's only then when I'll feel like my vote matters. Let's face it, over the last 20, 30 years, we've learned a lot through independent research that perhaps the presidential election doesn't even make sense or matter. That perhaps there's, you know, governments above them, a shadow government, uh, certain elitist groups that really run the show. And if a president is willing or trying to convince me otherwise, then they have to be willing to take those chances, those risks to have conversations that most politicians don't want to have because they follow like a script or whatever. I need someone who's going to be, you know, gutsy, put their chest out and be like, let's talk about this. Whatever this is, let's talk about it. That way, you know, let's make a few people uncomfortable at home or, you know, have some eye popping conversations like, wow, I haven't heard anyone speak this way since JFK or whomever. And I understand it's a risk with that. Presidents, you know, in our history and throughout the world, you know, have been assassinated. There have been attempts when you try to, you know, go against the agenda. And I think Trump might be one of those guys. I'm not sure yet, but I feel like he is. But for certain, Kamala is not going to go against the agenda. Kamala is a seasoned politician. We know her history somewhat, but how comfortable are we with her in office? Let's be honest. Trump is the devil we know. We endured 4 years of Donald Trump. Whether you thrived during those 4 years or whether you just hated every single day of him in office. But we are familiar with his process. Kamala, on the other hand, we're not. And as someone who grew up, you know, voting Democrat because that's what I didn't know any better. You know, when you're a minority and you're 18 and you're told you can vote, you typically follow the trend of those before you or your family or whomever. Oh, you know what? Those conversations or conversations I relate to, or this person may look like me, or they seem cool, or they have performers at their events, rappers and entertainers. I'm gonna vote for them. And we know that's foolish. That's foolish thinking. That's just no way to vote, no way to utilize your vote. Um, but as a young person growing up, you don't know any better. And I would say as time progressed, I've become more conservative. I think most people, as they get older, become more conservative. So I'm impartial. To be honest with you, I don't like neither of these guys. And I don't feel like you have to pick red or blue, you know, liberal, conservative. You can pick who you want to pick. There's this notion that you have to choose one side. No, you don't. No, you don't. I grew up a Democrat. I'm not going to vote Democrat because someone may have a background that's similar to me. It's deeper than that. It's deeper than that, and that's when you have to. I hate this term with a passion, but that's when you have to become woke or awaken, the correct term. But you have to really just pay attention, be observant, follow what they're, you know, really get deep into what their objective is, what they're about. These candidates. But back to the debate quickly. Kamala showed poise. She ate Donald for lunch. She had her handkerchief on, and she got down to business. And Trump has to do better if he has any shot at this. You know, conversations about migrants eating cats and dogs is just not going to cut it. It's not. As appalling as that may be, if it's happening, I don't know. But if it is happening out in Ohio, that's still not enough to get a vote. Trump has to come out next debate like gangbusters. Topics need to be brought up that we haven't heard before. No countering what Kamala is saying. and know this and know that. They can't keep countering one another. There's got to be new, fresh topics, things that you want to implement, things that you wish to eradicate. Give people hope and reason to vote. That's how I feel. Uh, if I could morph all the presidents into one, I would certainly take Trump's um, take charge attitude. I really think deep down he means well, but he just doesn't have it. He doesn't have the it factor. Again, he's not a politician. He doesn't know how to really conduct himself professionally on those platforms. He's known for his business acumen, but I would take his take charge mentality. I would take Obama's ability to speak. He's very articulate. Maybe his cool, calm demeanor. Maybe JFK's passion for just overtaking these shadow governments. Give people reason to want to vote for you. Don't follow what those before you did and use buzzwords and cute terms thinking that's it. We're gonna fight on taxes. We're gonna fix our roads. All right. We're gonna eliminate drugs and guns. You're not gonna do neither. Guns and drugs are as American as apple pie. It's what makes the economy go. It's a cash cow. These are things that'll always be a part of America until the day that we all are all 6 feet under. So I'm never gonna fall for we're gonna clean up our streets and remove drugs and guns and cut it out. These things are traded often. There's reasons why they're so accessible. I need presidential candidates to stop insulting my intelligence. There's those of us out here who are actually pretty bright, pretty intelligent, who don't fall for the okie doke. And presidents just need to do better here on out. I would love for January 2025 to get here and there be no president in office. How about that? Just change the whole system up. Have no one in office, and maybe that would awaken politics. That will awaken future politicians to do better. Maybe that'd shake some things up. Just have no one in office. Maybe let Congress run everything. And I don't know. Because this is not it. This is not it. Again, this is probably the worst election year in my lifetime. And I don't know how 2028 gets better, if we're even here by 2028. So we'll see how this turns out next debate. Should be interesting. We'll just see what this end result is. I haven't made up my mind on what I'm doing. Quite honestly, I've skipped a few elections. I'm sure my ancestors are turning in their graves, and there's some angry baby boomers if you're watching, but convince me. Give me a reason. 26. Personally, I didn't vote for Obama's second term. Just didn't think he deserved the vote. There was a year where I may have done a write-in. I might have written Kanye West in one year. I don't remember. I know there was a year in 2016, might have been, where I didn't vote, and I didn't vote in 2020. Didn't vote in 2020. I'm lying. I voted in 2020. I did another write-in. Because these candidates aren't it. They're not doing it for me. They're not doing it for me. So hopefully things improve. We'll cross our fingers. The other subject would be the Shannon Sharpe fiasco. Now, those who watch or are watching this may think that I'm a hater of some sorts, and I don't care. That term is so overrated and overused, but I've been called worse. But Shannon Sharpe recently, went on Instagram Live, and for a minute and change, he was overheard having some kind of sexual encounter with someone. The name that we heard was Michelle. Who knows? I'm not even outraged by that, as unprofessional as that would be for someone in his, position to have allowed to happen. Because let's face it, he allowed it. This was staged. There's just no way he just went on Instagram Live and hit the record button and voila. It doesn't work that way. There's steps on Instagram, and there's many people in here who've already broken it down. Instagram Live is not as easy as just hitting the record button. So my beef with Shannon Sharpe is why he's so sought after at the moment. Why is he the it guy? There's been a lot of former jocks turned broadcasters over the years. who haven't gotten the same type of recognition Shannon Sharpe has or has gotten at the moment. This is no knock on my Southern folks because, half of my family derived from the South. But there was a time in history where the country bumpkin type would never be accepted on mainstream, television. It wasn't a thing to do. Shannon Sharpe, not only being a country boy, but he has a notable, lisp. Speaks with a lisp. And I don't know if he has the right whatever that I'm looking for, the word I'm looking for. I don't know if he has that. But for some reason, he's been the go-to guy in black media. He's basically the male Oprah at the moment. And I'm not sure why. I've seen better people who have the look, who carry themselves a certain way, who speak a certain way. I've seen those out here, but they're not getting the same opportunities. Sharpe has never studied broadcast journalism. He's never, and I'm not saying you have to be a major in journalism to get a job, but it would be nice to see the media reward those who, paid their dues to become featured faces on television. But Sharpe, I'm not going to call a grown man Shay Shay, but I know he goes by Shay Shay or Unk. But Sharpe has been on my television screen for the past 20 years. When he retired, he was one of the featured co-hosts on the NFL Today on CBS, and I thought that was a good look for him at the time. He would wear his little bow ties, he had some nice suits on, and I thought it just was a good look for him at the moment. And then all of a sudden, he became like the it guy. His YouTube channel can amass millions of views in no time. Everyone wants to sit down and have a conversation with him. He has his little nightcap show with Chad Ochocinco. He was on Skip Bayless' Undisputed show. Now he's on First Take. He's everywhere. And I don't know why it's him. There have been other retired players who, again, fit the bill. They fit the mold, but they're not getting the opportunities. That's my beef. So Sharpe releases this IG Live. He's not, there's no trouble after that. So he's not terminated or suspended or nothing. He can go right back to work Monday. I just feel like anyone else would have gotten in trouble. Anyone, myself, someone, on a greater platform, there's a suspension, there's a termination. But he's a cash cow. He's making ESPN money. The viewership is there. His YouTube channel is blowing up, has blown up since the start of the year. It's different. It's different. I just would love to know what goes on in these boardrooms. Maybe I don't want to know, but it's weird and it's pretty obvious when it comes to black media or entertainment. It's always one person. Kevin Hart has become the face of black comedy. Not comedy, just black comedy. A lot of us question that because a lot of us don't find him funny. You have the one face of rap. It's the Jay-Z. He's like the godfather of hip hop. And some people don't even think he deserves that position. There's always that one person. You got Shannon Sharpe now, the face of black media. You got Stephen A. Smith, the face of sports media. It's just weird to me how they're selected. Again, could be a longer video next time, or could be a video next time that I touch on that. But I don't know. I don't know what Shannon Sharpe's up to. It was definitely staged, in my opinion. I'm sure this is going to catapult him into some type of other success, because that's just how these things work. It's how the Kim Kardashian sex tape worked some 20 years ago. It's how these things work. These guys sit down and come up with these strategies on how to make their next, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, how to get their next big contract. They do little stunts like this. It's WWE, it's wrestling, all of this stuff is. It is sickening and it's tiring. And Shannon Sharpe shouldn't be reprimanded for having sex. He's a man, he's an adult. We do these things. But the idea that it was released on that platform, and there were no consequences, little eyebrow raising if you ask me. And I want to touch on the announcement that Kendrick Lamar will be the featured performer at Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, and the outcry, the backlash that came after that. I'm not sure what the big deal is. If you ask me, Kendrick Lamar is the safe bet, but there are many people who feel otherwise. There are many people who feel as if Lil Wayne is deserving of that spot, considering the location of the Super Bowl being in New Orleans, which is Lil Wayne's hometown. I don't believe he resides there now, but he is originally from there. Listen, this is all about the bottom line, and the bottom line is the dollar bill. Kendrick might be the safest bet. He's had a pretty remarkable last few months with his back and forth with Drake. He's a Grammy Award winner, and he may look the part. It's hard to tell $1 billion corporation what they've done right and what they've done wrong. They are $1 billion corporation for a reason. Lil Wayne, to me, is the better rapper. I put it this way. I prefer Lil Wayne's music over Kendrick's, but I can understand why Kendrick would be given that spot. And we have to start using common sense. Kendrick Lamar and his people know that they're getting a lot of backlash. So it's only common sense, in my opinion, that he will feature Lil Wayne. At some point, he'll bring Lil Wayne out because there's never just one performer at the Super Bowl halftime show. Never. So if Wayne accepts the invitation, he'll be there. He'll be there. And if he doesn't, life goes on. There was a time that we didn't have black performers at the Super Bowl. Year after year, we saw the Rolling Stones, Willie Nelson, Maroon 5, Coldplay. I mean, there were times you wouldn't see anyone of color. So the idea that Kendrick is there is a win. It doesn't matter if Lil Wayne's not the guy. It's a win. So I don't know if this is just media blown or people really upset. I'm sure they are. I'm sure there are people out here just like, damn, Lil Wayne should have been the guy, and they're losing sleep. I'm not. Think about it. Lil Wayne, we see his look. I don't have to get too deep, but his face is tatted. He has blonde locks. He promotes drinking lean. And I'm a Wayne fan. But if you're trying to market your biggest spectacle of the year globally, who would you want to see as the face? Think about that logically. Do you want Kendrick, who's not, he's not squeaky clean. He has a checkered past like Wayne and every other act before these guys. They all have checkered past. Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger, checkered past. They all do. But who's the safest bet? Who's someone that you can put on a billboard and just, let's be honest, satisfy white America? Think about it. Think about it logically. Kids that are watching the game for the first time. Spectators who are watching the game the first time. Do you want to see a guy who, I don't know, has substance in his music and talks about social injustices and things of that nature? Do you want to see a guy with a tatted face and, he might be high, he may not be high, who knows? It's tricky. But it's about the dollar bill. It's about marketing. Madison Avenue in New York City. These guys think about these things before they make these announcements. We're getting fussy over nothing. There are much bigger fish to fry than to worry about Lil Wayne not being the headliner at the Super Bowl. I mean, think about it. In history, most cities never bring out prominent musicians that are born or raised in those cities. When the Super Bowl was in Indianapolis, I didn't see the Jackson 5 there. Now, I know Michael Jackson was long gone, but his remaining siblings are alive. They didn't perform. The Super Bowl was in Atlanta. They had Big Boy from Outkast featured, but he wasn't the headliner. The Super Bowl was in New Jersey several years back. Mr. New Jersey himself, Bruce Springsteen, wasn't there. Bon Jovi wasn't there. There were other acts. I think Bruno Mars was the headliner. basically my point is, just because it's in a city of a prominent musician doesn't mean that that musician performs there. Beyonce performed one time. I believe it was in, I forget where it was at, but it wasn't in Houston, where she's apparently from, because it doesn't work that way. People have to start using their common sense and just start thinking back to how the NFL operates. They've never, you know, the Super Bowl was in Miami one year. Prince was the headliner. Prince wasn't from Miami or Florida. Doesn't work that way. So again, we're crying over spilled milk. Not a big deal. But I just wanted to recap this past week's events. There's a lot of stuff going on. The YouTube algorithm is very tricky, so I don't know how many eyes are actually going to see this, but it's something that I think I will do from time to time, just because I feel like I have the ability to do this, and talk about different topics from time to time. Hopefully this week coming up isn't as crazy with the news, and all these subject matters, but it's something that I think I will do from time to time. So I appreciate you watching the channel. I appreciate you guys spending this time with me. Until next video, I'm out.